Kevin Stefanski might have cited injury protocol, but Eric Dickerson isn't buying it. The Hall of Famer claims Shedeur Sanders wasn't benched due to health concerns, but as part of a larger, more insidious NFL pattern. According to Dickerson sources, the Browns manufactured the injury to justify keeping Sanders off the field. He ties this to an ongoing effort within the league to marginalize players affiliated with figures like Deion Sanders, whose bold personality and media presence make him both powerful and polarizing.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The Browns' decision to elevate less capable players over Shedeur, despite offensive struggles, fit a troubling trend that Dickerson insists is no coincidence. At the heart of Dickerson's accusation is a belief that the NFL isn't just making football decisions, it's making political ones. By sidelining Sanders, the Browns sent a message that transcended performance. Connection to Deion or refusal to stay in line can cost a player their shot. The fabricated injury, the lack of transparency, and the silence from league officials all point to an orchestrated attempt to control player narratives and limit upward mobility for those who don't conform. There's controversy, and then there's this. A Hall of Famer directly accusing an NFL coach of lying to keep a young black quarterback off the field. That's not drama. That's a full-blown scandal. Eric Dickerson didn't hint, didn't speculate, didn't couch it in maybes. He came out swinging, claiming that the Cleveland Browns, specifically head coach Kevin Stefanski, faked an injury to bench rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders against the Patriots. A back injury, they said, out of nowhere. And just like that, Sanders was sidelined. Dickerson said what everyone else was thinking. It doesn't add up. There was no injury in practice. No lead-up. No pain, no limp, no setback. Sanders suited up, participated in warm-ups like everything was normal, and looked physically ready to go. But then he was benched, officially due to a back issue. But according to Dickerson, that injury wasn't real. It was a cover, a calculated decision to keep Shedeur out of the game. And if that's true, it's not just shady, it's explosive. Why would the Browns do this? According to Dickerson, it's personal. It's political. It's about power. This wasn't just about Shedeur as a player. It was about who he's connected to. His father, Deion Sanders. Deion has always been loud, proud, and direct. He's not afraid to challenge the status quo. He speaks up. He disrupts. He doesn't play by the NFL's quiet, corporate rules. And while that's made him beloved by fans and players, it's also made him a target. And now, Dickerson argues, the league's resentment toward Deion is being taken out on his son. He's not wrong to say that there's a pattern here. Shedeur was a highly touted quarterback. The talent was clear. His leadership, his vision, his poise under pressure, it was all there. And yet, he dropped to the 5th round of the draft. 5th. For a quarterback with his skill set, that raised serious eyebrows. Now barely into his rookie season, he's being quietly pulled from a game for reasons that don't hold up under scrutiny. Meanwhile, the Browns' offense has been a disaster. Dead last in the league. And in a game where everything was going wrong, they still refused to let Shedeur play. Instead, they relied on struggling quarterbacks like Dillon Gabriel and practice squad call-up Bailey Zapp, who was named the backup ahead of Shedeur. That decision alone set off alarms. And here's the part that really makes it hard to excuse. Shedeur didn't pull himself. He didn't report pain. He didn't ask to sit. He said himself. He was physically able to play. But the organization made the decision for him. Then they slapped back injury on it and kept moving. Dickerson called it what it was. A deliberate move to sideline a player who threatens the system. Not because of what he's done wrong, but because of what he represents. Shedeur isn't just another rookie quarterback. He's calm, focused, confident. He doesn't shrink from a spotlight. And with Deion as his father, the attention was always going to be intense. But instead of giving him space to shine, it seems the Browns, and maybe the league, are doing what they've done for years to players who don't fall in line. It's the same energy that surrounded Colin Kaepernick when he took a knee. The same brush that painted Cam Newton as too flashy and not a leader, even when he was an MVP. The same framing that made Eric Reid a problem because he dared to speak truth to power. Now it's Shedeur. And the Browns' handling of this situation only adds to the suspicion. The sudden injury report. The choice to elevate a practice squad player above him. The refusal to let him play, even as the offense fell apart. It all suggests this was never about performance. It was about politics, protecting egos, keeping the status quo intact. Stefanski, as head coach, sits at the center of it all. And if Dickerson's sources are right, if Stefanski played along with this fabricated injury narrative to keep Shedeur out, then that's more than just bad coaching. That's manipulation. That's abuse of power. And here's the thing. Dickerson didn't make this accusation in a vacuum. He said he heard it from inside the league, from people who know what's really happening, people who've seen the decision-making behind closed doors. That gives weight to what would otherwise be a wild accusation. But even without inside info, the signs are there. You don't bench your most promising quarterback when your offense is failing, unless something else is going on. You don't keep him off the field when he's healthy and ready, unless you're trying to protect something other than your win column. And yet, through it all, Shedeur has stayed composed. He hasn't taken to social media to rage against the machine. He hasn't called anyone out. He's kept his head down, leaned on his faith, and trusted the process. That maturity, that focus, it only highlights the contrast with how the organization has treated him. It's hard to miss the message here. When a young black quarterback who checks every box still can't get a fair shot, what does that say about the system? Dickerson laid it bare. The NFL still has a problem. A deep, systemic one. It doesn't always look like outright racism. It looks like injury reports that aren't real. Depth charts that don't make sense. Narratives that quietly shape a player's future before they've even had a chance to prove themselves. And this isn't just speculation. It's history repeating itself. You can trace the pattern back through decades of league behavior. Players who were too outspoken, too connected, too uncontrollable have always been pushed to the margins. And when those players are black, the push is even harder. The scrutiny is sharper. The tolerance for mistakes disappears. That's the reality Shedeur is facing. But the story doesn't end here. Because if there's one thing this league has never fully learned, it's that talent, real talent, can only be buried for so long. Dickerson believes in Shedeur. He sees the potential, the poise, the leadership. And he's not the only one. There are scouts, players, former pros, and fans who all see the same thing, a quarterback ready to lead. And if the Browns won't let him do that, someone else will. Eventually, the smoke clears. The truth comes out. And the players who were silenced find their voice and their field. So where does this leave Stefanski? His offense is crumbling. His job is under pressure. And now he's at the center of a scandal that calls his integrity into question. If it's true that he was part of the effort to keep Shedeur benched, the consequences shouldn't stop at public criticism. Coaches are supposed to develop players, not bury them for personal or political reasons. And where does this leave Shedeur? Ironically, maybe better off. Because the truth is on his side. The league might try to control the narrative, but they can't ignore the facts forever. The longer this drags out, the more obvious it becomes that he's being treated unfairly. The NFL has a choice to make. Keep playing the same old game, or start facing the reality that fans are watching, and they're not buying the excuses anymore. What do you think? Was Shedeur's injury legit, or just a smokescreen? Was this a football decision, or something much deeper? And should Stefanski be held responsible for how this was handled? Drop your take in the comments. Like if you're tired of the politics. Share if you think this story needs to be heard. And hit subscribe. Because this kind of drama? It's far from over. Let's be honest, it shouldn't be over. Not when you have a player like Shedeur Sanders, fully dressed, warming up on the sidelines, and completely ready to go, only to be quietly erased from the game plan. That's not strategy. That's sabotage dressed up in team gear. Eric Dickerson said it, and he said it loud. This isn't about Shedeur's health. It's about control. It's about silencing a rising star before he becomes a threat. It's about putting him in his place, not for how he plays, but for who he is, who his father is, and what that represents. Because Shedeur is not just another quarterback prospect. He's Deion Sanders' son, and that comes with weight, with legacy, with expectations. But it also comes with a bullseye. And the NFL has shown time and again that it doesn't like being challenged, especially by confident, self-assured black athletes who come into the league already knowing their worth. Let's be real. Shedeur has handled this mess with more professionalism than the entire Browns front office combined. While fans speculated, analysts dissected, and Dickerson blew the whistle, Shedeur kept his cool. No public tantrums. No messy interviews. Just a quiet, composed presence, standing there, suited up, as if ready to step in and rescue the offense at a moment's notice. Except he was never going to get that chance. Because this wasn't about readiness. This was about removal. And Stefanski? He didn't even bother to clarify the move. He let the injury story float out there like it was gospel. No elaboration. No timetable. No accountability. Just a vague note on the injury report and total silence after that. Like Shedeur had vanished. But he didn't vanish. He was right there. And so were the fans, watching in disbelief as Bailey Zapp, yes, the practice squad guy, got the nod ahead of a legitimate rookie talent. Dillon Gabriel struggled. The offense sputtered. And Shedeur remained on the sideline, treated like a ghost. You don't need insider sources to know something's off when a team this desperate for a spark flat-out refuses to use their most exciting option. Dickerson connected the dots. He made the comparison that so many were already thinking about but weren't ready to say. This felt familiar. This felt like Kaepernick. Like Cam. Like every other black quarterback or outspoken player who got too big, too fast for the comfort of the league's gatekeepers. This is how it always starts. First, you get labeled as difficult. Then your value gets questioned. Then, mysteriously, you're injured. You're not a fit. You're being protected. And just like that, your career is stalled. Not because of your talent, but because of the narratives being built around you. And who controls those narratives? The coaches, the teams, the league, not the players. That's why what Dickerson did matters. Because he didn't just speak up for Shedeur, he challenged the machine. He made it harder for the Browns to pretend that everything was fine. He forced people to look at the situation for what it really was, a manipulation of opportunity, dressed up as caution. And let's be clear, Dickerson didn't just stop at calling out Stefanski. He went bigger. He said this is part of a broader, long-running effort to marginalize players connected to Deion Sanders. A slow, calculated campaign to keep his influence out of the NFL's inner circle. The kind of influence that dares to question the way things have always been done. Because Deion doesn't do quiet. He doesn't do politics. He builds winners and calls out losers. He praises his players in public, defends them in press conferences, and demands excellence. And that kind of leadership, that kind of bold, unapologetic energy, it doesn't sit well with the NFL's old guard. So what's the easiest way to attack it? Go after the next generation. And Shedeur just happens to be the perfect target. Young, talented, poised, and threatening, not because he's loud, but because he's undeniable. They know what happens if he gets on the field and dominates. They lose control of the narrative. And this is where things get even uglier. Because instead of embracing that potential, the Browns are actively burying it. While their offense crumbles, they cling to safe, system-friendly options. Guys who won't shake the table. Guys who don't have a legendary father tweeting about them. Guys who won't question why the media's pushing one storyline while the truth lives on the sidelines. It's hard to watch. Not just because it's unfair, but because it's familiar. We've seen this before. Talented players benched for team reasons. Leadership decisions that never quite add up. Quarterbacks who get labeled as a problem before they ever get a real chance. And through it all, Shedeur just keeps showing up. He keeps doing the work. And that quiet resilience? It's louder than any press conference. But here's what Stefanski and the Browns don't realize. They're not just sidelining a player. They're building his case. Every week Shedeur doesn't play, and every week the team flounders. Fans start connecting the dots. And when that happens, the team stops being a football operation and starts looking like a political machine. You can't claim to be building for the future while locking your future away on the bench. Dickerson is forcing that conversation. And for once, it's not coming from some outsider. It's coming from a man who played in the system, who lived the politics, who knows exactly what it looks like when a player is being kept down for reasons that have nothing to do with skill. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's a pattern. It's the same story with a new face. And now, the league has a choice. Keep pretending it's just strategy, or start owning up to the way politics, race, and power still dictate who gets to rise and who gets left behind. But here's the thing no one in Cleveland wants to hear. You can't suppress real talent forever. You can delay it. You can dodge it. You can fake a few injuries and shuffle your depth chart. But eventually, people start asking why your most gifted player isn't on the field. And the answers don't get easier. Shedeur's future may not be in Cleveland. And at this rate, that's probably a blessing. Because sooner or later, another team is going to look at what the Browns refuse to see, and they're going to hand him the ball. And when that happens, all this politics, all this hiding, all these excuses, they'll mean nothing. Because you can't coach around the truth. So what happens now? Do the Browns continue to pretend that they're protecting Shedeur from himself? Do they keep pushing a weak offense and expect fans to believe they're doing their best? Or does someone finally stand up and say, this isn't about football, it's about control? And when does accountability kick in? Because if a head coach is manipulating injury reports to keep a player out for non-football reasons, that's not just unethical, it's disqualifying. And if the NFL wants to prove it values fairness, then Stefanski should be answering for this. Not just in post-game interviews, but in front of the league. The silence speaks volumes. But so does Dickerson's voice. He didn't just call out one coach. He called out an entire system that's been rigged against outspoken, talented, unapologetically black players for decades. And this time, the receipts are on full display. Behind the scenes is exactly where the power plays unfold. The kind of moves that don't show up on the stat sheet, but reshape careers before they even start. That's what this is really about. Shedeur Sanders wasn't pulled from the game because he was injured. He was pulled because someone decided he was too big of a risk, not to the scoreboard, but to the structure, to the culture, to the fragile egos clinging to outdated playbooks, on and off the field. Eric Dickerson didn't have to say what he said. He could have stayed in the Hall of Fame circle, smiled for a few cameras, and kept it light. But he didn't. He put it all out there. This injury was fake. It was orchestrated. It was part of something bigger. And he said it with the kind of confidence that only comes from someone who's seen this exact situation before. Because once you've watched enough talented players get pushed aside, when their only crime was being too visible, too connected, too unapologetically themselves, it stops feeling like coincidence. It starts to feel like a blueprint. And right now, Shedeur Sanders is being drafted into a storyline he didn't ask for, but was always going to be part of. The second he stepped into the NFL with Dion's name behind him, with his own highlights, his media following, his poise, it was inevitable. The league loves a good story, until the main character starts writing their own chapters. That's what they're afraid of. Not a rookie mistake, not a loss, but the moment when Shedeur steps onto the field and proves he's the best quarterback in that building. Because once that happens, you can't go back. You can't pretend the depth chart makes sense. You can't justify giving the ball to practice squad placeholders or leaning on underperforming stopgaps. And most of all, you can't pretend that politics weren't involved. That's why they did it. That's why this whole charade of an injury got rolled out before kickoff. It wasn't about his back. It was about covering theirs. Because if Shedeur had gone in and lit it up against the Patriots, the spotlight would have shifted. Stefanski's decisions would have come under fire. The team's motives would have been exposed. The narrative wouldn't be we're developing talent. It would be, why did you bury him until now? And for the NFL, which thrives on carefully crafted stories and protected power hierarchies, that's unacceptable. You don't let a Sanders kid, especially that Sanders kid, make everyone else look foolish. Not unless you want a revolution in your locker room. So they did what the system always does. Shut it down before it could start. What's wild is how transparent it all looks now. Shedeur wasn't just a healthy scratch. He was visible. On the field. In uniform. Throwing passes like someone fully capable of playing and waiting to be called up. But the call never came. Because the call was never going to come. And when a young man knows he's ready, when he's done the work, kept his mouth shut, waited his turn, and still gets boxed out, it doesn't just affect him. It ripples. It sends a message to the rest of the league, to the locker room, to other young black athletes watching from college programs or high schools, thinking, if they'll do that to him, what will they do to me? That's why this story matters. Because it's not just about Shedeur. It's about a system that still punishes the confident, the connected, the charismatic, especially when they're black, and especially when they refuse to play the game the way it's always been played. Shedeur's not broken. He's not bitter. He's not backing down. He's doing what great players do. Waiting, learning, staying ready. And that should terrify the Browns. Because they're sitting on a quarterback who's clearly got the tools, the mindset, the pedigree. And they're wasting it, not because they're trying to win, but because they're trying to maintain control. But that control is slipping. Dickerson cracked the door open. The fans pushed it wider. And now the Browns are standing there with nothing but a vague injury report and an empty scoreboard. What are they going to do next time? Keep pretending? Keep him sidelined while the offense sputters? Keep making decisions that get harder to justify with every game? Because the longer this goes on, the louder the question becomes. What are you afraid of? Afraid he's not ready, or afraid that he is? Let us know where you stand. Was this really a back injury? Or was Shedeur silenced for reasons the team won't admit? Did Stefanski make a football decision, or a political one? And is Shedeur's best chance at success going to come after he leaves Cleveland? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this if you're seeing through the excuses. Share it if you know someone else who's asking the same questions. And make sure you're subscribed, because the NFL might try to bury stories like this, but we're going to keep pulling them into the light. Because Shedeur's story isn't just a controversy, it's a turning point. And the league can either evolve or get exposed trying to prevent it.